I've got an application here that uses a SemanticZoom control. This is showing a view over every blog entry I've ever written. Even with the grid view packing a fair number in, this is enough data to get annoying to scroll over. So this is a good candidate for SemanticZoom. If I zoom out, it switches to an alternate view that shows things grouped by year, along with an article count, illustrating that my blog has followed the usual pattern of initial enthusiasm drifting into guilty neglect. I can tap on any of these years. I'll go for 2007, and you can see it scrolls to a place where 2007 is in view. I'll zoom out, and this time I'll go for 2011. And again, it zooms in to a suitable scroll position. Also notice this toggle button at the bottom. If I tap that, it flips between the two views. Let's look at the code. Now, I can't really talk about all of this because it relies on data binding. If you want to get the SemanticZoom control to synchronize the scrolling between the two views automatically, the only way is to use data binding's grouping support. In principle, you don't have to use data binding, but it will get more complicated because you need to provide your own implementation of some interfaces, which in this example are being provided automatically by the grid view. So this is the simplest approach. It just means that a few of these details might not make sense until the data binding module. But the basic structure of the example is simple enough. I've got a SemanticZoom control here. I've set its zoomed out view property to contain this grid view. I'm using grid view because that provides built-in SemanticZoom integration. This item template tells data binding how to display each item. So this is where the year and the item count are being shown. Scrolling down, you can see the zoomed in view property. This is another grid view. And this time, I've used some rather more complex data binding. My detail view groups items by year, so I've defined templates for the groups as well as the individual items. None of that is specific to the SemanticZoom control, by the way. You'd do something very similar if you just wanted a grouped view from a grid view without using the SemanticZoom control. We'll be getting into these sorts of details in the data binding chapter later on. The code behind has some code to fetch the list of blog entries. I'm doing some rather nasty screen scraping here because my RSS feed doesn't provide a total history. But my blog serves up some handy yearly summary views that are all well-formed XML, so it's not too tricky. The important thing is at the end of this, we'll have a list of objects describing all my blog entries. I then use some link code to group these together by year, and then I make that the data binding source. This line here ends up providing the detailed content view with all of the items grouped by year, and then this line gets the data binding system's grouping wrappers and uses those as the source for the zoomed out view. That looks a little weird, but it's what you do if you want to take advantage of the built-in synchronization between zoomed in and out views provided by a pair of grid view controls in a SemanticZoom control. And that's actually all we need to do. So I loaded some data and wired it into the two grid views in a slightly idiosyncratic way. And those two grid views are in the zoomed in view and zoomed out view properties of a SemanticZoom control. The only other piece of code here is the click handler for my toggle button. And all that does is call toggle active view on the SemanticZoom. The control is doing all the work here.